19th of August is a day marked in the United States to celebrate and honor the pioneers and inventors of the aircraft. Through massive inventions that have helped improve the sector, the day that also commemorated alongside International Humanitarian Day that celebrates and honors frontline workers that have risked their lives to humanity. Today, we are here at Wilson Airport to speak to Roger Sluan, who is going to take us through the journey of the triumphs and the trials of Mission Aviation Fellowship. In marking the celebration of the National Aviation Day in the United States, a day that recognizes the pioneers of aircraft and technology, that also celebrates the Humanitarian Day aimed at recognizing the work of frontline workers in service to humanity and around the world. It is no coincidence that the world also gets to celebrate this very day for aiding workers who provide life-saving assistance to suffering people around the world. This would not be possible without the aviation industry. Airplanes are now highly effective tools used to deliver help and hope to places where there's no airports at all. Where the terrain is rough and tough, or where maybe an airstrip may be a crude clearing through a jungle or on the side of a mountain. National Aviation Day, celebrated on August 19th of every year, should make us stop and think about the power of flight. Scientific and other technological marvels have become so commonplace that we rarely take time to re-examine the revolutionary impact with an open mind and inquisitive gesture. In just a handful of generations, aviation has gone from pure speculation to a mundane reality that inspires us all. In this very day, we choose to celebrate the miracle of flight with the Mission Aviation Fellowship pilot. Mission Aviation Fellowship Airline, abbreviated as MAF, the vision is to bring help, hope, and healing to isolated people and marginalized community.
So MAF, or MAF, I think in Kenya they call it MAF, is a ministry worldwide, but here in Kenya, we operate aircraft in Kenya and we're supporting local organizations. And we support organizations that are doing humanitarian work, medical work, relief work, but also church planting and evangelism. So any organizations that are involved in that kind of ministry, we're basically partnering with them. And our goal is to be like the donkey in the story of the Good Samaritan. So we want to be in the background doing the logistics. We're like the donkey carrying someone, carrying the injured person or whatever. Our goal is to support and be a support to the ministries around us. Yeah.
It's interesting how you mentioned, supporting marginalized communities. Are there any current projects that you're working on, especially with marginalized communities that are now widely known in the country, especially right here in Kenya?
So one of the ministries that we're partnering with is Cure Hospital based up in Kijabe. And Cure Hospital works with children, mostly with orthopedic issues. And one of the initiatives that we have currently is that we fly doctors and teams to remote locations, and then they will do surgeries and medical interventions in isolated places, such as Bura, Lamu, and places like that, where the children can get support that they would never get in their hometowns where they are.
Right, and MAF has been there for, let's say, over 10 decades. How did you find yourself working with MAF, and especially right here in Africa? Maybe just a brief origin of that transition from where you were born and how that journey began.
Sure. So I think just briefly, MAF started sort of around the Second World War. So pilots that had been flying military aircraft decided, let's do something to serve Jesus with the skills that we've developed. And they began MAF, so about 75 years ago. And for myself, I grew up in Tanzania. I was 2 years old when my family moved to Tanzania. I lived in Arusha and also in southern Tanzania in Mbeya. And it was in Mbeya that I saw my first MAF aircraft. And I recall the pilot, I remember him walking up to the aircraft and he had these really cool sunglasses on. And when I saw that, I thought, that's the job I want to do. I want to be an MAF pilot. That's where it all began for me.
Wow, interesting. And
your transition from Tanzania to Kenya, what are some of the challenges that came up, especially when it came to like finding your ground in the country, maybe just having to experience Kenya for the first time?
Yeah, so I was still quite young when we moved to Kenya, transitioned from Tanzania to Kenya, and I finished my high school here in Kenya. So for me, Kenya's home. I've been here for a long time. I only went away then to do my studies in Canada. That's where I did my aviation degree. And I returned then as soon as I could back to Kenya to begin flying for the program here in 2006.
Yeah. And not only do you just share Christ and change lives and give hope, but you guys have had tremendous achievements in your project. What are some of those outstanding achievements that you say you still hold on till today, and you'd really love to share them with everyone so that they get to know about MAF?
Yeah, I think it's just sort of the global impact that MAF has. Like I said, we are mostly behind the scenes. We provide the support to other organizations. So we're not an organization that is in the limelight very often. You don't see us in the media very much. We are sort of in the background doing the flying. So for us, the achievement is to see the organizations we're supporting really flourish and do well, and to see the gospel spread through those organizations. And I think one of the ways to see that is to know that MAF is operating in over 30 countries around the world. We have around 130 aircraft. And if you look at us and compare us to other airlines, we are landing in more airstrips daily than any other airline in the world. And that's landing in very remote, very short, isolated airstrips in places that no one else goes. So,
and aside from that, you also double up as a pilot as well?
That's correct. At the moment, I'm the head of operations here at the MAF Kenya site here, and I also fly. So I do regular flights in Kenya mostly, also sometimes up into South Sudan, but the majority of our flying now is here in Kenya. So weekly we'll do flights up to areas like Lokichokio or Marsabit, some places up towards Lake Turkana, many places that Kenyans have heard about, but they've never really seen because they're so isolated. Yeah.
It's amazing with technology actually taking over the world by storm. Would you say there have been like outstanding achievements and even improvements, especially when it comes to the aircraft? Of course, you're celebrating National Aviation Day.
Yes.
Are there any tremendous technological advancements that have helped you leverage in your missions, especially with MAF?
Yeah. I think if you look at the aircraft behind us, this is a Cessna Caravan. And if you think about Wilbur and Orville Wright, the first men that built a motor-powered aircraft, if they would see this aircraft, they would be amazed, I think. I mean, if they looked inside, they would be shocked at the technology. For example, in this aircraft, the avionics that we have in it would be unimaginable even 20, 30 years ago. Touchscreen avionics. I think one of the biggest technological advances that you would see in these aircraft would be GPS positioning. So the aircraft is able to communicate with satellites and find the exact location within a few centimeters of where we are. That's phenomenal, and something that the original men, on their flying machines would be shocked if they saw it. Yeah.
It's actually an interesting description. And talk about now the mystery of like getting into a pressurized tube, racing to the runway and just flying off in the air. It's actually very bizarre to, especially to the people you go to deliver missions to in marginalized communities. What is that one outstanding memory that you would say, this one is really the peak of the day, especially when it comes to the mission?
Mike, can I pinpoint one experience? And I struggled because there's been so many times where I've been amazed. I think for me, it's an example. One example would be when I was flying in South Sudan. We left Juba and I flew north about 3 hours and landed in a community called Renk. And Renk is so isolated. The people there have had no exposure to anyone from the outside. And to just stand there and think that many people around have never heard who Jesus even is. What a thing to think. And that's in South Sudan, but it's the same in places in Kenya. I think of some of the communities that I've flown to where the same could be said. Very few people there have had any contact with Christianity or with the message of hope that we have in Christ. And I think that is what motivates me to continue flying and continue supporting in this ministry as I have been. Yeah. I think it's important to note, one of the things that people often think is, oh, MAF is a bush organization. We fly into crazy places. We must be doing crazy things. But yes, the context that we work in is quite unique, and it is quite unpredictable. Yeah. But our organization and the way we run things, we operate a lot like an airline in terms of our efficiency, and we use a lot of processes, and they help us to stay safe, and we rely a lot on them. And so even though our context might be a bit challenging, we're able to operate within that context quite safely. And and that's thanks to a lot of effort put by many people to make it a safe operation. Yeah.
Talk about terrain, especially when it comes to those places, also geographical locations that might have a little bit of difficulty when it comes to delivering missions. How exactly do you maneuver for that to make your mission successful?
So a lot of that has to do with training. So especially for the pilots, when we arrive here, like when I arrived in Kenya in 2006, I was a commercial pilot. I had been flying in Canada, but before I can get in this aircraft and fly for MAF, I need to do quite a bit of training. And the reason is because of the places that we go. Being able to land on those short airstrips, on those tight areas where there's a lot of terrain, hills, where the weather is challenging. All of those things make the environment we work in challenging and difficult. But a lot of that can be mitigated. A lot of those things can become much easier if the pilots are well trained and know what they're doing. So it really is about training. I mean, I think of some of the locations that we go. There's an airstrip in northern Kenya, Gatab. It's on the side of a mountain, and it looks challenging. But when I come in, I've been trained well, and I know sort of what to look for and how to approach the airstrip so that I can land safely there, and then also depart again safely. And those things are very critical. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic striking almost every country, every continent right now, there's been a lot of mental health issues. Talk about how MAF has actually come in to actually break that gap of trying to educate, and even as you deliver your, let's say, your missions and even some of the objectives that you set up, how have you tried to mitigate mental health awareness, especially to those marginalized communities?
I think from perspective of MAF, we are very focused on sort of the overall health of people, so mental health definitely comes into that. And so some of the organizations that we're partnering with also work in those areas with mental health counseling and so on. And we're very keen to support that kind of work. And yes, I think within the organization, you're right. A lot of the communities that we work in, the marginalized communities, many people think they don't struggle with a lot of these issues, but we're all human and we face the same challenges no matter where we are. And one of the things we've definitely seen during the pandemic, there's been a lot less transportation going into communities. There's been a lot less movement in and out. And so a lot of these marginalized communities in northern Kenya and northeastern and eastern Kenya, they are very cut off from the rest of the world and the rest of Kenya. And I think for them, it is a big struggle and a challenge, financially, but also emotionally and mentally, like you mentioned. And we're very excited and keen to get flying again. We're hoping that, as the vaccine comes in and as organizations are able to safely begin operations again, we're very keen to move into those isolated areas again and support, because there's a big need for that.
And all of this cannot happen without, of course, planning. There's the finances involved. Where do you guys get all the funding to just run all these activities, the missions and everything, apart from if you've talked of religious organizations coming in to partner with you? non-governmental organizations and whatnot. Where do you guys, apart from that, where do you guys get your funding, your finances to actually run all this empire?
It is quite large. So the entire organization is basically resting on the backs of individuals who are donating. So a lot of our donations and support come from Christians in Europe and other parts of the world who give generously to the work of MAF. And what that allows us to do is reduce our cost. So we do still have to charge our partners to fly in our aircraft because it's so expensive to fly aircraft. But we're able to reduce the overhead costs through donations that we receive. And that makes it much more affordable. And it allows us to also keep a very high standard in the organization. Yeah.
For example, anyone who has a dream or a vision of joining MAF, what exactly should they be like? Should they go to an aviation school or something? Just the know-how and basically the qualifications.
Yeah, so we're here at Wilson Airport. We've been around in Kenya now for for over 60 years actually in Kenya. So I think quite a few people know where we are. But if we have anyone who's interested in becoming a pilot and they want to know more about MAF, they can pass by our office hours, and our pilots will be happy to speak with, and myself be happy to speak with aspiring pilots to give them some pointers. But basically, the idea is that you need to go and do the training, the flight training, and get the pilot's licenses, and then come and speak with us, and we can discuss how to move forward. So we do actually have schools that are specifically for MAF. We have one in Europe and then one in Australia, and they sort of are specific to MAF. And yeah, it would be very exciting to see more and more Kenyan pilots flying, not only in Kenya but also worldwide with MAF. That would be wonderful to see that. Yeah.
What is that one outstanding detail about MAF that actually sets it apart from all these other airlines? Would you say aviation companies? What is that one outstanding detail that actually sets MAF apart from everybody else?
I think it's our vision to see the isolated communities reached with the love of Christ. That's one major thing that makes us unique. And the fact that we're a non-profit organization. We're not here to make money, we're here to support. And that we're funding, a lot of what we do is funded through individuals. That's quite unique. And it allows us to be different. It allows us to do things a little bit differently than maybe other organizations. And yeah, it's exciting. That's one of the reasons why I'm a part of MAF, because it is a unique organization that can do a ministry that is quite unusual in the world, especially in the world of aviation. Yeah.
Are you open to partnership? For example, maybe somebody watches this conversation online and they want to partner with you. Are there maybe portals or places where they can access so that they can be part of Mission Aviation Fellowship?
So one of the ways that we would definitely like to encourage the ministries within Kenya, the churches and other organizations, to get in contact with us, especially if they're struggling with logistics of getting to remote locations. We're very passionate about spreading the gospel to northern Kenya and northeastern Kenya, those areas where most people are not able to reach. And if there are organizations out there that want to partner with us, we're very excited about that. And as far as job opportunities in MAF, they also do come up periodically. And yeah, it's exciting to see new people come in and join us here, actually working in the team. And yeah, we hope to see more involvement from communities around with the ministry of MAF. Yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of involvement, would you say National Aviation Day, is it highly celebrated in Kenya as compared, let's say, to the United States or maybe developed countries? Would you say, like in Africa, it is celebrated as much?
It's hard for me to say. I've spent most of my life growing up here, so to be honest, I don't even know how they celebrate it in other places. I think Aviation Day, it's a reminder of how far we've come. Like, I was speaking with my son recently, and he was saying, who made the first airplane? So we actually looked on Google, and he was amazed of these two men, Wilbur and Orville, who just built an aircraft from scratch. And I think it would be exciting to see more people in Kenya be amazed at how far the aircraft has come and what we can do with it. And I'm glad that you are doing a spotlight on this, because I think it's exciting. Yeah.
When you're up there in the sky, they say on your way to the top it's lonely. What is that hardest decision you've ever had to make in the midst of your flight? For example, I don't know how many miles above the ground. What is that difficult decision you've ever had to make in your flight?
I think of one flight that I had where it was in South Sudan. It was quite a few years ago, and we had a long day. I had 3 or 4 stops where I had to land, and we arrived at the first location, and they were cutting the grass. So the grass was still very long. I was not able to land, and we said, okay, let's go to the next airstrip. We went to the next airstrip, and it had rained, and the airstrip was flooded, and we were not able to land. And then we said, let's go to the final airstrip. And then as I was looking at my calculations, I said, we have too much weight on board. I was expecting to drop people in that first airstrip and second airstrip. We can't even go to that third airstrip. And we ended up flying back to Juba without having landed in any spot. And obviously the team that we are flying was frustrated and said, we had all these ideas and plans of what we were going to do. That's the hardest thing as a pilot, is making those tough decisions that safety comes before anything. Like, you really need to be careful. It would have been risky to land at some of those other airstrips. And in the end, we had to return. And at the end of the day, they were grateful that we had safely arrived back in Juba. But they were also frustrated with the challenge of not reaching where they wanted to go. So that's the hardest thing when you're a pilot, is making those tough decisions. Yeah.
What's usually your, I would say, your worst fear, especially when you're up there in flight? Because I know a lot of people who are scared to fly. Maybe there's just that phobia of being in the sky. You're not sure when you're going to land. As in, you're not in charge as compared to our car. You're in charge of the gear, you're in charge of the speed. But in this situation, it's a pilot here. In this situation, you're not even seeing them. They're locked up in the cockpit. What is that one craziest fear that you would say a lot of people have, and maybe for yourself too?
Now, the good thing about the Caravan is that when you're inside, you'll see us in the front. There's no door, so it's a bit more open. I think the fear that pilots have is much different than the fears that the people in the cockpit would have. In the cabin, I think a lot of people, as a non-pilot, you're not really sure what to expect. For those in the cockpit, and what we try to do is we try to really get people to relax, because these aircraft are so safe. Especially now, these modern aircraft are very safe. And yeah, when we are doing our briefings, we try to reassure people that this aircraft is a very safe aircraft, and we're very well-trained pilots. The biggest fear for a pilot is that something unexpected will happen.
Like?
Some sort of an emergency. It's very unlikely, but it is possible. And we train for those things. One of the biggest things that we train for is the unexpected emergency that could possibly happen. It's very rare, but we need to be ready for those things as well.
MAF flies a fleet of aircrafts of over 1 million miles each year in most remote regions in the world. With these, MAF flies to more destinations than the 6 largest airlines in the world combined. Granted, these including dirt and grass airstrips in remote jungles and mountains. In every 19 minutes, in some of the most remote places on Earth, a MAF aircraft either takes off or lands. Mission Aviation pilots save valuable travel time and cover seemingly impossible distances in minutes or hours compared to days by foot, road, or river. Each year, MAF flies over 2 million nautical miles to speed the work of 500 Christian and humanitarian organizations. MAF flights support indigenous churches and local evangelists to create access to medical care, provide disaster relief, and make community development projects possible. This only happens in most remote places termed as inaccessible in the world. This is proof that aviation, given the will, can do the impossible. With a coverage of over 34 countries worldwide and now 34,000 aircrafts, Mission Aviation Fellowship not only extends resilience in sharing a message of help, hope and healing to the marginalized communities, but also still remains resilient in sharing information about the power of technology and aviation.